Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry Sadovia the Movies. So last night I went to the theater, which has been a while since I've gone, partly because of the pandemic and also working a lot. And I guess this is my first new video of the year. So it's a good way to start off with Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza, which I saw last night. And I have to say, I saw this film and I went in with the hope that it was going to be good and interesting and offbeat and all those things. And it's definitely that. But what really got to me was how much the film, not so much stayed with me, because I'm still thinking about it after it was over, but that it was almost, the film has this effect of a distant memory from the 1970s, an adolescent's view of memories in Southern California in the 1970s. And it really felt like I'd not seen a film in quite some time that really felt like it had the feel of a memory. It's hard to explain. The film is not, Licorice Pizza is not a romantic comedy. It certainly wasn't advertised as such. It's more like the story of this adolescent kid, 15 years old, played by Corey Hoffman, the late Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, who's he has an entrepreneurial spirit, but he's also an actor, and has appeared in some, I think, commercials and things like that. And he does stuff for television, so he's always auditioning and so on. And he meets this girl, Alana, played by Alana Haim. And by the way, for Alana Haim and Corey Hoffman, this is their first film. This is their debut, so it's spectacular. Their faces you will not forget. This is one of those movies where the faces of these people stay with you long, long after it's over. I mean, you're not going to forget them. I mean, they are unforgettable. Cooper plays Gary Valentine. That's the character's name. So, and when he's at this kind of a theater type place or TV studio where all these kids are, he notices and takes a good notice of Alana. And she's a 25-year-old girl. He's 15, so, you know, there's that. And that age discrepancy is mentioned infrequently, but it's mentioned mostly by Alana. And she cannot understand why this kid is so, you know, into her, but he says, you know, look, I'm much older than you and so on. So, but he has a maturity that goes way beyond 15. And she could see that. There's something almost whimsical about this kid. And when she agrees to meet him at a restaurant for technically their first date, she sits down, and it's interesting how Paul Thomas Anderson composes the shots, because what it is she's sitting and you see her in the background, and she's not looking at Corey Hoffman, who we see the back of his head in the foreground, and she keeps looking and saying, "You're being creepy." And I thought that really took me back to being an adolescent, 15-year-old, just preteen years, trying to impress a girl and to get them to like you. And it just took me back in ways that this whole film did. I mean, the whole thing plays like when you have memories of what it was like to be a kid, your preteen years, and they're very strong memories, mostly being around other kids and not necessarily the parents in your life. That's what this film feels like. It feels like snapshots of a different time. There's no real discernible plot in this movie, and as I always said, you don't need a plot in a movie for it to work. The story is the story of this love between them, but really the story of Licorice Pizza is the memory. And that, to me, really, the snapshots, kind of like Boyhood, if anyone remembers Richard Linklater's film, Boyhood. That's exactly what this film felt like. It was very evocative of a time and place, and they're all sort of strange characters that come in and out, mostly adults. The kids all seem fairly normal, including Alana's sisters, who are I think they're a little older or younger than her. all played by her actual sisters, from the Hine family. Hine family apparently was very close to Paul Thomas Anderson, the director, so he knew them for a while. So that's interesting. But it's mostly, so the children are normal, including one kid played by, who I've seen in other movies now, including Booksmart. Skylar Gisondo, I guess is his name. He plays Lance, is another actor, part of this group of young actors. And he takes a liking to Alana. And in fact, there's a very funny scene where Alana takes him to meet her family. And he is Jewish, but he says, I can't partake in this ceremonial dinner that's occurring. I don't remember the name of it, but it's a Jewish type of celebratory type of dinner. And he says, because I'm an atheist. So there are moments like that that kind of just, take you off guard. Not to mention one from an adult that is caused a little bit of controversy. That's from John Michael Higgs. He's an actor you would recognize from Christopher Guest's films. In fact, I think all of Christopher Guest's films have John Michael Higgs in them. And he plays this guy, white guy, with a Japanese wife. In fact, through the period of the film, he has two different Japanese wives, one younger than the other. And he owns a Japanese restaurant where the cuisine is almost all Japanese, but not exactly. And so when he's explaining to his wife how they want to change the advertising, he insults her by mimicking her Japanese accent, as if she will understand. And then we realize that Japanese wives, first of all, he doesn't even understand them. They only speak Japanese, no English. So now I know some people took issue, but I think that the characters in he's a bit of a, well, I can't think of a word other than, an ass. He's just, he is a bit of a racist, but he is almost like he has to, he just is a racist, I guess. Anyway, but I understood that as, seeing adults acting in ways that don't make sense. Particularly Bradley Cooper, who appears in the film as John Peters. And at one point, Gary Valentine has a waterbed business and selling waterbeds, but eventually that ends because of the oil embargo of the 70s, where gas was virtually, there were gas lines all around the country. And what is rubber made of? Oil. So, but anyway, the last waterbed, I guess, that he sells is to John Peters. And they screw up his apartment and everything else. And Bradley Cooper just plays him in a strange way. Like, every character in this film is so strange and eccentric, beyond really what may even have been intended for their role. But that was the idea. I thought that the adults were just meant to be strange, because the younger people are looking at them and not really understanding what's happening. So he is terrific. Bradley Cooper just really understood John Peters. And if you've ever heard Kevin Smith's story about John Peters, you'll definitely agree. And then the other character that I found fascinating but I didn't quite understand was this actor Jack Holden, who I imagine is based more or less on William Holden, played by Sean Penn, who's terrific, as always. And there's a long scene where they're at this restaurant, and he invites Alana there, because Alana's auditioning for a role of a character named Rainbow. And he goes off on all these tangents, and, kind of, you're not sure if he's just running lines or what he's doing, but he's trying to impress her. And then he goes on this motorcycle ride across this area, because everybody in the restaurant knows who this character is. A lot of the actors frequent there. And Gary Valentine happens to be there and is a bit jealous, to say the least, of all this attention that Sean Penn is giving her. And Alana's in the back of the motorcycle, and as he starts off, she falls into the ground. And, there are just moments like that that feel, I didn't fully grasp what was happening. But I understood it as, the payoff is the fact that then when Gary Valentine sees her on the ground, he runs to her. So no matter what's happening, no matter all the craziness, like at one point Gary Valentine's arrested for murder when in fact he didn't commit it, they somehow, Alana and Gary find a way to connect. They still manage to have a connection, and that's kind of the film. It's sort of like, it's not totally dissimilar in some respect to Punch Drunk Love in terms of that type of structure. But no matter what's happening in the world, they find each other. And that I found very romantic in its own way and very sweet. This is the sweetest film I think Paul Thomas Anderson ever did. And if you know his work from back in the day, Boogie Nights and Magnolia, Hard Eight, There Will Be Blood, Punch Drunk Love was certainly, this may be not exactly the film's twin, but along those lines. But I didn't really care for a couple of Paul Thomas Anderson's films. I haven't seen Phantom Thread yet, but The Master was fine. It's watchable. I don't know if I would ever see it again. But I really hated Inherent Vice, so I didn't know really what to expect. But with this film, it seemed as if he was more grounded this time in a world that is very personal to him, because after all, he also grew up in Southern California, and he knew all those, he knew that part of the world. And Boogie Nights, Paul Thomas Anderson, I believe, even lived either down the street or near a family of people. Not unlike in Boogie Nights, with Jack Horner, you know, Burt Reynolds' character, that made porn films. So all this is very personal to him, and maybe that just feels more in tune with Paul Thomas Anderson. So as much as I admire There Will Be Blood, which is a film that I'm still caught between saying it's a really great film and just a good one, it's a film I'm still kind of fixated on. I haven't really forgotten it, so that's usually a mark of at least a good film, a watchable movie. I mean, that's kind of hard to find nowadays. But Licorice Pizza might easily be the very best film I've seen him do. It's one of the very best films I've seen in years. So despite certain sections of the film that I didn't quite fully understand or grasp, maybe on a second viewing, I'll get more out of it. But I understand the idea of seeing all the adults as eccentric characters in a world where Gary and Alana are somehow committed to each other, but there's still obstacles to overcome. And even though there's that age difference and the love is not consummated, you still feel as if their love is almost, it's going to be undiminished. And maybe as they get older and he gets older, they will have more of a connection. There's also a subplot, if you want to call it that, at least another situation Alana gets herself into when she works for the mayor's office, a mayor-elect office, and she finds that she's canvassing basically, and always on the phone. And there's one scene where a guy enters the place. He has long hair, glasses, and he's carrying some sort of a bag with him, and then he looks around, then he walks out, and she notices him immediately, and he's standing across the street, you know, against this wall, looking right at the campaign headquarters where she works. So she doesn't know what to make of this, and she comes up to him and says, "What do you want? What are you doing here?" "Well, somewhere else. I'm free. This is a free country." He says, "You're asking me questions. Maybe I have questions I need to ask you." So I wasn't clear if this guy was a reporter or trying to get a scoop, because the mayor-elect himself turns out to be homosexual, or if he was somebody that wanted to bomb the headquarters. Maybe he doesn't like this guy's politics. That was one thought at first. That was the first thought I had. And then later on, the mayor, the mayor-elect takes her to a restaurant, invites her to a restaurant for a drink, only with the pretense of making sure that she drives home his lover, who he's having dinner with. And that was a fascinating scene, because I didn't know really what was coming up. It's really one of the, this is a film, by the way, that, you know, thank God, I mean, you can't predict where it's going. You have no idea. But isn't that what memories are all about? You know, when we collectively put our memories together, particularly being an adolescent, there's strange and weird things that always happen, and we can't really connect all the dots, but that's kind of what this movie is. That's why I love it so much. And so as she drives this guy home, before she leaves, she notices outside the restaurant that same guy, the long-haired guy from earlier at the campaign headquarters, is there. So we don't know really what is happening here, or if this guy is even a former lover. I mean, we don't know. It's hard to say, it's never explained, but it's just, what I love about that is that, again, these are strange, eccentric situations, and we don't know really, we don't know how to assimilate, not assimilate, but to fully understand or articulate what's happening. And that's a good thing. It doesn't feel too off-center. It's not like something that's introduced that doesn't make any sense. It's there, and we have to sort of, look for the subtlety in that, of which there may be. And again, on a second viewing, there's probably something more subtle and incisive going on than I had even realized. So, Licorice Pizza, despite some, again, very strange situations, is a phenomenal film. This is just one of the very best films I've ever seen in a long time. And that's a lot of credit to Paul Thomas Anderson, who came up with this story because he knew somebody who was a child actor and told him all these stories about being an actor, appearing on, actually, in the movie, it's a different title, but, oh God, it's a Henry Fonda picture that was remade years later called Yours, Mine, and Ours. And anyway, this guy also apparently was a waterbed salesman and a pinball machine. Not salesman, yes, but he opened the pinball machine store back when pinball machines were considered problematic until that dissolved. So, and the character Gary Valentine goes through all that, and it's just fascinating. And I love both performances. They are just indelible actors. I mean, it's hard to believe this is their first film for both of them. All the actors in this movie are terrific, but those two in particular, just, they stay with you in ways that even just a regular romantic comedy doesn't always do that. I mean, there are some that do, but this was really the first time that I saw two young people, and I'm not always into young people's movies anymore, but this is the first one I've seen about a young couple, who could be a couple, but not exactly, that it just resonated in a deep way with me. It's still hard to fathom what it is, but the film has the feel of distant memories, and they're hard to understand sometimes and to kind of maneuver through, but that's what it's all about. And it's just a remarkable picture. I don't have enough high praise for it. I expected it to be good and with some good songs and probably a reminder a little bit of Boogie Nights, but this is so far removed from anything in Boogie Nights. I mean, this movie is... Licorice Pizza is unlike anything I've seen in a long time, since probably Boyhood. That would be the film that I think this film resembles. So there you go. So that's my review. Hopefully I'm going to write down my thoughts soon and on my blog, but I can't say enough good things. Check out Licorice Pizza. You want to see something strange, moving, offbeat, romantic, charming, whimsical, and very much resembling memories as if you were an adolescent all over again, this is the film to see. And it's extraordinary for what it does. And I would almost say, look, I haven't seen too many films this past year, but I would put this film at the top of the 10 best list, if not the front runner for Best Picture. But may not happen, but who knows? He's still probably too eccentric for most people, even for the West Coast, and he's a West Coast person. So, Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza, check it out. And this is Jerry Sadovia at the Movies, signing off.